pretty much resembles, in my opinion, the old fairy tale we have all read in school, Sleeping Beauty. We, of course, don't know in which form the handsome prince is going to come and from where and help us reboot India. We are extremely happy that our first round of webinars received overwhelming eyeballs, and we were nudged by our members to do this series titled Reboot India. And one of them, our own members, Ravi Sena Reddy, was so excited with the first round that he willingly came forward to support this initiative. Thank you very much, Ravi. We begin at the beginning because we have one of industry's best views ahead of this webinar series 2, past president of SICCI, past president of FICCI, and a doyen of industry in South, Dr. A.C. Muthaya. He shares a view remotely, and I draw your attention to that.
Friends, we're facing challenging times, unprecedented. We have to face it with grit and confidence. We should be thankful at this time of trial. We are blessed to have a dedicated and outstanding leader in Modi ji, who is working tirelessly to overcome the abnormal situation which the nation is facing. Except for the slip-up on the migrant labor issue, mostly we have controlled all other challenges. It is very rare that a leader owns responsibility and apologizes to the nation for this lapse. It shows the greatness of the man. Now I am given to understand this is also coming under control. Post-COVID-19, the whole economy is going to go through a painful reconstruction program to meet the challenge. Both government and RBI have taken a number of preventive measures to stem the fall. I'm hopeful that we will succeed in arresting the fall. Jai Hind.
Folks, we begin the series, as I said, Rebooting India, with arguably the best brand in the IAS in India today. An alumnus of IIM Calcutta, a topper of the 1992 batch of the IAS, and perhaps industry will substantiate what I'm saying, the most accessible IAS officer in the country, and I dare say I know a little bit about it. He made Telangana the most preferred destination in the country for investment, not only in the IT sector, but almost in every other sector. I still recall during this lockdown a few weeks ago, concerned as some of us were on some of the issues that the startups were facing, I texted him on WhatsApp, and within 20 minutes, he was on the call to give me a fair hearing. And that's the kind of man who the World Bank picked in 2000 to do one of its kind, perhaps a first of its kind, to assess how the poorest of poor live in a village. He did a project to assess them, and he, through his efforts, demonstrated that poor have limitless ability to transform lives. He did this by living with the poorest of poor, one amongst them. A great humanist. As we begin to talk about it in the post-COVID era, how IT can transform the world and how IT itself will change the way business is done, plus, of course, how the world readjusts and re-engineers itself to the new context. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the most distinguished IAS officers in the country, the man who's put Telangana on the world map of IT, and plus more, much more, Jayesh Ranjan. And to talk to him is one of India's most distinguished TV and media journalists, my good friend and brother, S Sudhir. Over to you, TS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ganapathy. I completely second all that you said about Jayesh. I've known Jayesh for many years now, and I've always admired his skills in navigating different departments. In addition to what you said, I recall that if you speak to anyone who knows a bit about tourism, especially in erstwhile United Andhra Pradesh, they will recall the kind of innovations that he brought into that sector while he was heading the tourism department. Jayesh, I can see that during the lockdown period, you have put your shaving kit under lock and key. And this kind of a dapper salt and pepper look really suits you, especially for those of you who don't know, Jayesh is quite a connoisseur of fine arts and has a real interest in music and culture. So this kind of a look really goes with that, Jayesh, and quite a different world from the world of industries and IT and textiles that he handles in his present responsibility as Principal Secretary, Industries, Government of Telangana. Jayesh will speak for the next 10 to 12 minutes, give his view on how the world has changed post-COVID and how the Government of Telangana and India in general is really gearing up to face this challenge in a Corona world. Jayesh, your mic is live, and after that we will interact, take a lot of questions from our participants, people who are listening in. Thank you very much, Jayesh, for joining in.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sudhir. And thank you, Mr. Ganapati, Mr. Raghavan, other senior leadership from SICCI for inviting me to this webinar. It's a matter of real honor and privilege to interact with all of you. So as Sudhir mentioned, I'll speak for about 10 minutes or so. And roughly I'll speak in 3 parts. One, I'll speak about what's really happening right now. What is the COVID scenario? Because while we are in lockdown 4.0 and more relaxations are being given, it is not to say that COVID has completely vanished from India or from the world. So I will also share with you what is the current status and what we have been doing well in the last few months. And I'll speak about the 2 subjects I look after, IT and industries. What is happening in the immediate future and what are our plans for the medium term and the long term. And then I'll be very happy to listen to your ideas, your suggestions, your questions, etc. So let me first of all begin by mentioning that since the chamber looks after the whole of South India, we all know and admire that Kerala has really succeeded. If at all anyone has to compliment a state in India today on absolutely perfect COVID management, that credit will go to Kerala. But I also feel very proud to share with all of you that after Kerala, a few other states who have done well will include Telangana. In fact, if you look at the numbers themselves, our number of positives from the beginning when COVID outbreak started in India is just around 1850 odd. And we have had about 53 deaths, unfortunately. So the numbers by and large are very, very small, very minuscule. And the other good thing to share with you is that all these new cases which come. So as I said, the numbers are 1850 odd. I mean, every day at around 8 o'clock, we get that day's number. So today also some numbers will come. 1850 may become 1900. Because for the last few days, we are observing every day an increase of 40, 50, 60, 30 in that range. And we all know that in other states, I don't want to run down any state or name any other state, but many states are showing numbers every day in thousands, 2000s, and so on and so forth. So in that context, ours is extremely well contained. And the other good positive thing to share with all of you is that most of these new cases, these 40, 50 cases which come every day, they are coming from extremely limited number of containment zones. So this is also a very kind of positive thing, that this is not spreading all over. It is not that every day some new outbreak happens. There are some certain number of containment zones from which unfortunately new number of cases are coming. So the success of how we have been able to keep the numbers very low is that we have done a very effective contact tracing. So when the cases started to come, many of you will be able to recall that in early periods of March, there was a gathering in Delhi, in Nizamuddin, and then people who had attended this gathering, when they went back, they started spreading. So at that point in time, our government became very alert. We were able to pinpoint who are the people who came back to Telangana after attending that event, whom did they get in touch with, where are they living. And so a very effective kind of contact tracing, and then obviously quarantine management, that happened. So because of it, the number of quarantine zones, the number of containment zones have really come down. They are only a limited number of containment zones in Hyderabad city. Rest of the state is completely open. And in terms of mortality also, as I said, of course, losing even one life is a matter of sorrow and we should feel sad about it. But as I said, as compared to other states where hundreds of people have died, we have just lost 50 lives, and that too elderly people, mostly who have other comorbidities, etc. So because we have been able to manage it well, our numbers are low, morbidity is low, cases are coming only in well-defined containment zones. And these zones also, let me share this with you, are very, very small geographically. So if, let us say, in an apartment complex, suppose we find one positive, it does not mean that the entire neighborhood gets locked down. Only that apartment is made a containment zone. So we have limited number of zones, and that too geographically very pinpointed and very precise kind of zones. This is also the reason why Telangana is perhaps one of the very, very few number of states where regular economic activities, commercial activities, they have all been allowed. So in many other states, private companies, private offices, IT offices, industries have been allowed to function, but there are restrictions, like only 1/3 people can come, 33% people can come. But in Telangana, we have done away, we have removed all these restrictions. So if a IT company says that I want to function with 100% of my staff, there are no restrictions at all. If an industry says that I will work for 3 shifts with all my 100% employees, there is no restriction at all. The only restriction is that you have to follow personal hygiene, social distance norms, and so on and so forth, which is obvious. We can't dilute that. So this is one very positive thing to share with you, that we are trying to bring back our livelihoods, economic activities as normal as possible. And of course, the companies themselves are taking a little bit of time to sanitize their offices, their factories. And this facility that you can start working, this facility was given on 30th April itself. So for the last 25 days or so, everything is back to normal here. The other point which I wanted to share was that even during the peak lockdown period, as all of you would know, certain essential categories of industries were allowed to function. So in Hyderabad also, for example, pharma industry is quite big. So all the pharma companies were allowed to function, all the food processing companies were allowed to function, all the packaging industry units were allowed to function, and so on and so forth. And again, since I mentioned pharma, I feel very happy to share with you that 80% of the pharma companies continue to function as normal as before. Of course, with the reduced staff. In the peak of lockdown, during lockdown 1.0, as we call it now, the number of employees who were participating in the manufacturing industries were limited, but 80% of the industries continue to function. And the industry representatives share this feedback with us, that their own supply chain, how they receive raw material and all the other logistic support which they get, it was least disrupted in Telangana. Most of the activities, they were able to continue in a manner of relative normalcy. So these are positive things about Telangana, that our industrial base, at least in the essential sector, remained functional. And from 30th April onwards, we have given the green signal for rest of the industries also to restart. But we also know that COVID's impact on the economy has been very, very deep. Different sectors have been impacted in different ways. Certain sectors have lost markets because consumer preferences have changed, or the product has lost value in the market. There are certain number of industries whose supply chains have been disrupted. There are some industries where operational problems have come. They want to start, but they were dependent upon migrant workers, and today there are no workers to work for them. So different kinds of industries are facing different kinds of crisis situation. And in Telangana, one thing which we have started doing it almost now almost 20 days ago, and we are close to finalizing it. And I'll be very happy if SICCI also joins. And what we are doing is that we are preparing toolkits for different kinds of industries. What we have chosen 10 top industry verticals of Telangana, where we have large number of industries. And again, we are making a distinction between large companies and mid-scale and small companies. And we are mapping what the reality for that industry sector is. Is your market intact, or has it been disrupted? Are consumers prepared to respond to your products? Is your supply line intact? Is your production process intact? Are there other liquidity challenges? Is there any cash flow challenges? Are there huge inventories? So different industries will have different kinds of realities. So we are studying what the reality of your particular industrial sector is. And most importantly, with the help of domain experts, consultancy firms. So BCG is partnering us, Indian School of Business is partnering us. So with the help of these kind of domain experts, and then we have also taken a few individual domain experts. They are all preparing what can be done to really come out of this situation. I mean, you have been impacted. There has been an adverse consequence on your industry group because of the COVID. But obviously, we have to take steps to bring you back onto track. So what precisely needs to be done? What is it that the national government should do for you? And we should advocate before. And we should advocate before the national government to get you that support. What should the state government do? What are the things which you yourselves can do together, and so on and so forth. So this is an exercise which I think will be of tremendous value to the industries. They will have a very easy kind of a ready reckoner or a toolkit to use to kind of develop their roadmap. We were also banking a lot upon support to come from national government. In fact, when our Prime Minister announced in his speech that 20 lakh crores worth of relief will be provided to the economy, equal to 10% of our GDP, we were very hopeful that a large number of economic sectors will be covered, all kinds of support will come. But subsequently, when the announcements came, all of us know they're called Atmanirbhar packages. And as you know, 5 packages were announced. And we found that I can't say that nothing has been done. Of course, some relief has been offered, but it is not substantial. So here we are back to square one. Our earlier belief was that the national government will give a generous kind of a support, and then we will study it. And if something is missing there or not exactly responding to any particular industry sector, then we will try to add something from our state's perspective. But of course, at the end of it, we found that the national government itself has offered very, very little, and hardly sufficient for all the industrial sectors. So we are back at square one, and we are also in some kind of a lurch now on how to respond. But nevertheless, this support on guiding industries on how they can review their markets, how they can review their production processes. I was mentioning that certain companies have lost production processes because lots of labor whom they were employing are migrant labor and they have left. So we are also guiding them. Of course, it may not work out immediately. This can be a more medium-term solution on what kind of mechanization, what kind of automation, what kind of technology support can be done, through which some of this dependency on outside labor is reduced and you are able to continue your operations in a seamless manner. Is it possible to offer certain of these functionalities or operations as a service? So you don't decide to employ people on your own to do those kind of jobs, but as a service, it is provided by a third party to all those companies and so on and so forth. So that is one kind of thinking that we are having. For our IT sector also, again, as you know, in Hyderabad, we have global MNCs, we have large Indian service majors, and also there are mid-scale companies and small companies. So we feel at this point in time, the mid-scale and small companies are the one who require lots of support because they are very vulnerable. Most of the people who were banking on US projects or European projects, etc., there is already indication that the number of projects will come down, IT spend will come. So we have decided to support them in 3 specific ways. One, what we are planning to do is to give large number of government projects to these mid-scale companies. See, as all of you would know, government itself is a consumer of IT in a very big way. And in Telangana, the exercise that we have carried out is that there are 38 government agencies, government departments. Actually, we have been doing this exercise for the last 2-3 years. And the fact that we have been hit by this pandemic has only helped us in the fact that we have so much of preparatory data and information. So for the last 2-3 years, what we have done is to identify in each of these 38 government departments, what are the processes that they follow, which can be made IT enabled. How do they reach out to their customers, their clients, their stakeholders? How can that outreach process be made more tech enabled? And we are now preparing a bank of or a basket of such projects, which can be opened up exclusively to the MSME IT companies which are located in Telangana. So as a government, we'll be able to create some business for them so that their immediate problems of cash flows, getting orders, liquidity, that is managed to some extent. Another way in which we are helping these mid-scale and small IT companies is that many of them, the reason why they're not able to compete when such kind of challenges come across is that they don't have the best possible talent. I mean, they have good people, but you can't say that the best, most talented people are working in a mid-scale company. So what we have decided is that we have an institution in Telangana, which is called TASK, the Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge. So we are preparing, we have given this offer to all the mid-scale companies that if your employees want to take any reskilling programs and improve your skills so that they are much more market relevant and you can get newer projects, then we will be able to run reskilling programs for your employees completely at government's cost. So we will pay for these courses, and these will be top class courses developed by the best IT minds, etc. The third benefit which we are giving, which is a very significant benefit, which is typically if you analyze the costs of an IT company, we see that infrastructure costs are quite high. So if you are renting an office space in Hyderabad, you pay high rents because urban rents are typically very high. Your power costs will be high, internet costs will be high, commute costs will be high. So what we have decided is that there are smaller towns in Telangana, for example, Warangal, which are called Tier 2 towns, Tier 3 towns, places like Warangal, Nizamabad, Karimnagar, Khammam, Mahbubnagar, where our government has actually built space for IT companies. So we have offered this to all the small and mid-scale companies that if you want to hive off a part of your work to one of these smaller places, we will give you rent-free space. So your rental cost plus your internet cost, power cost, all this we will bring it to zero for some years. And of course, in these places also, we will train your employees, we will help them maintain good quality, etc., etc. So this is how some package we have worked out for our IT industry, for the mid-scale industry and the small companies. Of course, the big boys can obviously take care of themselves. The last thing which I wanted to share with all of you is that we are also seeing where are the opportunities at this point in time. While there is gloom, there is despondency, economy has been hit badly, but are there opportunities also? And I'm sure all of you are aware about it, that some opportunities are coming by. For example, many companies, again, this is due to the anti-China sentiment, which has been prevailing for quite some time due to the US-China trade wars, and which has been further enhanced due to this COVID pandemic's origins in China. Lots of companies and countries also, incidentally, have taken a decision that if they were invested heavily in China earlier, they would like to now review that and they would like to prefer a geographical diversification strategy, which means that they would like to look at other locations also where they can set up their manufacturing. So obviously India potentially can be a very attractive destination. And given the fact that a few months earlier, before the COVID pandemic struck, our country has reduced corporate income taxes, some reforms have been carried out. Even in the Atmanirbhar packages, reforms have been indicated. And much before COVID, etc., has happened, almost 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Telangana already has taken some path-breaking reforms. Our ease of doing business ranking is the best in the country. We have a revolutionary law which is called TS-IPAS, and so on and so forth. We feel that amongst other states in our country, we are in a better position to really catch on this or latch on these opportunities. So we are moving very aggressively. We are being assisted by lots of other system partners. For example, today morning itself, the Indian embassy in Tokyo has organized interactions with some Japanese companies for us. We were able to tell them about what advantages Telangana can offer. Invest India is guiding us in where are these opportunities possible. Of course, I know that other states are also doing. It's not that Telangana is the only state, but tomorrow when companies start looking at India, we want to be counted as one of the front-running states. And I would request SICCI members also, if there are members of your network or your supply network, if you think they can be influenced to come to India, we'll be very happy to host them in Telangana. I will just take another minute to, I had not thought that I will speak about it, but since I see very, very senior industry leaders and veterans in this call, I will just tell you 3 salient features about our industrial policy. Tomorrow, if you are talking to someone who is in Japan or Korea or US or Europe or China, and you want to tell them about India, please tell them about Telangana and use these 3 points that I'm going to mention about Telangana. So the first thing is that Telangana is the only state in the country where you can start the construction of your factory building or your industrial building right on day 1 without waiting for any approval or permission. So as all of you are familiar, since you are industry veterans, you know that getting the building construction permission, this Gram Panchayat clearance, municipal clearance, water approval, groundwater, that easily takes 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months, depending upon the efficiencies which prevail in that state. In Telangana, that 3, 6, 9, 12 months is actually 0. I mean, you can select your land in the morning and in the evening you can start your construction. You do not require any approval, any permission for that. The second important point to share with you is that we give all approvals and permissions when you are ready with your commercial production. For building construction, nothing is required, but when you are ready to manufacture products in your industry, you do require approvals and permissions. And in Telangana, we guarantee that in 15 days. If you don't get it, if you, let us say today is 25th May, suppose you apply on 25th May, and if you don't get any reply by 10th June, from 11th June, you can start your factory. No questions will be asked. So 15 days is the guarantee for giving approvals and permissions. And the third thing which I want to tell is that we have a very attractive package of incentives, and there is a flexibility of meeting or beating the best offer that company would have got from anywhere else. So if a Japanese company tells me that I went to Gujarat government also and they told me that they will give me this much of GST benefit, this much of power tariff, this much of capital investment subsidy, I will just close my eyes and say yes to it. There is no bargaining, there is no negotiation, there is no give and take. If you tell me that Gujarat has given me 100, I will make it 101 and sign and hand it over to you. So please tell people about these advantages of Telangana. Companies who have done business with us in the last 5 years are really impressed that such a fundamental reform is ever possible in the government system. And they have been pleasantly surprised. And many of the people who have invested in the past have invested the second time, third time, fourth time. In fact, I can share this example, and this can be the last thing which I tell you. This is a real example. I can tell the name of the company also, so that there is no doubt that I'm telling you something very authentic. This is a company called Hindustan Sanitary Ware. You may be familiar with this company.
Somani.
The owner is Mr. Somani, and obviously, as the name indicates, he's not from Telangana. There is nothing that he's obliged to give back to Telangana, because I think he's a Sindhi, and my guess is that his forefathers originated from Pakistan. But that's a different matter. So Mr. Somani, Hindustan Sanitary Ware, in the last 5 years, they have made 6 investments in Telangana. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 6 times they have done new projects in Telangana. And obviously, they find the going to be so good that they're investing again and again and again in the state. And he's not the only example. There are American companies, there are British companies, there are other large global players, multinationals who have done the same. So I request for that, please help us as SICCI attracting more companies to India and to bring them to Telangana. So I will stop with this. Sudhirji.
Yes,
Sudhir,
thank you very-
Sudhir, sorry to interrupt, but as president of SICCI, it's too tempting not to interject because Sandeep Somani is a friend. Sandeep Somani was president of FICCI and then handed over to somebody else from Telangana, which is Sangeeta Reddy, whom Jayesh and you know. And Sandeep never tires telling the story about how easy it is to walk into Telangana and get work done in every one of our executive committee meetings of FICCI. Yeah, I think, I thought before others applaud him, I thought I must, as somebody who's heard this story repeatedly in FICCI, and I think it's been a joy to all of us to know a state like this exists. And I thought I must felicitate Jayesh and his team ahead of anybody else doing that. And also use this opportunity to introduce Jayesh. On the screen is Sanjay Bandari. He heads MITRAA. MITRAA has been our knowledge partner in putting all these things together. And most of the tough questions have been prepared by them. So if you find it really tough, blame him. Okay. Over to you, TS. Thank you.
Okay. In fact, Jayesh, positive is generally a very negative word in today's circumstances. But listening to you, I'm sure everyone who's listening in must be feeling very positive about Telangana. So as a Hyderabadi, as a citizen of Telangana state, I personally feel very proud. But I want to ask you, you started by talking about the figures, the 1850 odd cases so far in Telangana of corona positive. The numbers are of course much lower than our neighboring states like Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra and also Tamil Nadu. Going forward, say when we are a little over the hill as far as, we are past this entire present crisis of corona, do you see brand Hyderabad, brand Telangana would emerge much stronger as a result of this lower numbers comparatively than when compared to say a brand Chennai, a brand Mumbai?
Yes, I'm confident about it. In fact, the IT industry itself praises us quite a lot. In fact, as all of you would know, the IT industry transited to work from home. When the lockdown, etc. started, we gave them this work from home option. But work from home is not a very easy thing to accomplish. I mean, we speak easily that you just go and work from home, but it is not as easy as it sounds. There is lots of steps involved. You have to shift hardware, and not every employee has his own laptop or something which can be utilized. You have to load software in that hardware. You also require your clients' approvals. Many clients are very sensitive about this privacy, confidentiality. Similarly, many IT companies in Hyderabad are in a special economic zone. So they're in that export kind of a scenario. There is lots of paperwork involved in getting those approvals. And I feel very happy that in just 3 to 4 days, this transition happened in Hyderabad. And all the IT companies, as you know, they have clients. They are executing projects. Some of them were given to them 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 months ago, without diluting any quality or service level agreements. The delivery schedules, the delivery standards were maintained as it is. So the reputation of Hyderabad as a reliable center, where even in adversity, people show professionalism, people show discipline, government supports them in these kind of challenging times, that reputation has been greatly enhanced. So I'm very confident that we will come back with very strong brand image for Hyderabad.
You spoke about a number of companies who could exit China in the near future. When I spoke to you for an interview in the last week of April, you mentioned a lot of American companies looking to do the same, and about how Hyderabad in particular could be a magnet of sorts. But would these companies be looking only for the usual stuff of reliable power, land, water supply, easy government clearances, etc.? Or would, in a COVID era, would they be looking for an X factor from any city, any government, any state that they approach to set up their base in?
See, we have been, I'm glad you have asked this question. In fact, this is something which we have thought through very, very deeply. And I would request SICCI as a body also to take it up as much as you can. See, my sense is that any company which is exiting China will look at how this new place will compare to China. That'll be the first question, or in my opinion, the only question to ask. So, in comparison to China today, there are lots of gaps in India. And many of these gaps, the national government should feel very sensitive about, and they should go all out to bridge those gaps. So one is that in China, they get scale. If you go to, let us say, Shenzhen, where I've been a couple of times, you see humongous kind of factories. I've been to the Foxconn factory in Shenzhen. I mean, the scale at which their industrial parks, some thousands of acres, and with it, it's all very self-contained. There are industries, there are housing, there is recreation. So scale is something which India should strive for. The second very important thing is the kind of talent they have. So the kind of skills, because of which productivity levels are very high in China. That skill levels, that productivity levels are not right now matched in India. So instant solution would be to invest in some best of the class training institutions, skill building institutions, revamp our polytechnics, PTIs. The third very important thing is, and in particular, since I'm the IT secretary, I also look after the electronics sector. We have been trying for the last so many years, but the electronics presence is still not yet picked up. The sole reason for it is that the whole value chain is missing in India. And potentially MSMEs can be, the Indian MSMEs, the local MSMEs can be very good value chain partners. They can be vendors, they can be ancillary suppliers, but they are not so considered so reliable and high quality because they lack access to the best quality machinery and tools which Chinese companies have. So these three things: large scale of industrial parks, best skill development infrastructure, and giving access to the best technologies and tools to our MSMEs so that they can become part of that global supply chain. So the recommendation which we are making to national government repeatedly is that if you think that there are 28 states and every state must do this, do that, you will be trying to do too much and nothing will be achieved. So our recommendation to national government has been to look at, first of all, those states where the policies are good, the states themselves are progressive, where stability is there, infrastructure is good, connectivity is there, and then back some states. So for example, Hyderabad already has a pharmaceutical ecosystem. Many of you would be aware that in the early stages when China was in the middle of this pandemic, when the COVID was in its peak in that Wuhan, Guangzhou, Guangdong area, lots of API suppliers, people who manufacture API in China, their factories were shut, and there was a cloud over Indian manufacturing. Since we import all that APIs, there was a fear that our companies will run out of raw material and there will be a crisis, and therefore the national government started a program which is still on paper only. I mean, it has not yet come on paper. They have just discussed with us on a couple of occasions that we will encourage domestic manufacturing of API. Now, if some of those API guys have to come to India, we have to offer to them what they were getting in China: large industrial parks, trained manpower, best quality vendors.
Yes.
Hyderabad already has that base. The government of India should back that kind of a API park, or let us say a pharma park in Hyderabad, rather than doing it in, let us say, some Madhya Pradesh or some Chhattisgarh or some Rajasthan. So we should pick and choose your champions, and then you should support them to the fullest. If you are able to do that, then I mean, these are the only four mantras in my opinion. Scale is one, skills is another, MSME access to technologies is the third, and of course consistency in policy. I say so because many companies, when we have been going to the World Economic Forum quite frequently, I attended 3 times as a part of this Telangana delegation, and there we get lots of questions about India's inconsistency in policy making. I mean, there is a policy today. I don't want to name any state, but I know of a state where once the government changed, all earlier policies were done away with, all the PPAs were kind of cancelled, and all kinds of contracts were reneged. So, I mean, these kind of things really shock international investors. So there has to be a foolproof guarantee that there won't be any such shocks at all. So in my opinion, these are the mantras, and the government of India has to drive it. If they do it in partnership with selected states for some of these important sectors, we will do well. So that is what I feel about it.
Yeah, what I like, Jayesh, is that you speak your mind, you don't mince words. Even when you don't name a state, it's quite obvious who you are referring to. But Sanjay Bhandari has an interesting question, and this is also related to the migrants that we briefly touched upon. Now, with labor laws leaning now more towards the industrialist with a hire and fire policy, do you see a rise of the trade unions, a Datta Samant kind of a situation all over again?
It is very, very possible, and that is why Telangana has refrained from tampering with our labor law. See, I can share this again with SICCI leadership, which is there, and other participants. In the last 5 years or so, the labor relations, the overall work environment in Telangana has been very, very conducive. We have never had any strike or lockdown or this agitations, etc. And as you know, India has a poor track record in these kind of things. In fact, again, as I said, I won't name names, but we have cases where a general manager has been shot dead on the shop floor. I mean, such kind of things have also happened in this country. But such things are unthinkable in Telangana. It is just not possible. Even someone touching you is impossible in Telangana, not to speak of shooting you dead. So the reason why such a nice labor relations, such harmonious labor relations prevail is that we take care of the labor. But at the same time, the labor wages, etc., are quite reasonable. We don't kind of make it too extravagant for companies to completely lose their maths and their economics, etc. And in the past, whenever we have tried to make investment pitches and we have reached out to companies, we actually highlight this point that in Telangana you will get the best labor relations, nothing will happen. So today, I don't want to do some very reckless changes in the labor law, just in the name of attracting new investments. I'm clear that this is going to be counterproductive. This will give rise to the kind of trade unionism, and the nicely held together labor atmosphere or environment which prevails in Telangana, that will be spoiled. But certain reforms need to be done. I mean, in these 3 states where labor law tampering has been done, they have also done some good things. For example, there used to be multiple inspections, so they have changed that system. There used to be too much of manual reporting for compliances, etc. They have made it electronic. So those kind of reforms, we 100% would ourselves. We have already done many of them, 1 or 2 which they have not done. We would like to do, but not these reforms that you make them work and don't pay them anything and stuff like that.
Now, in the first series of our webinar series, the SICCI webinar series, Mr. Ravi Prasad of Coromandel had made a point that all these migrants who are going back to their villages, he believed that at least 50% of them will not return to the cities because the city economy is going to be diminishing, it's going to be going down, and they will kind of find space in the agriculture sector. Taking off from that, Somi Hazari has a point whether there would be an IT backup. You spoke about government projects to many of these mid-sized IT companies. Will there be some kind of a backup from the government of Telangana to the agriculture sector in Telangana, given the kind of production that we do in Telangana in specific terms?
Yes, Sudhir, this is a very, very topical question. Some of you may be aware, but many of you may not be knowing this, that in the last 10-15 days, actually much more, much longer than that, but lots of public announcements have been made. Our state government is going for massive reforms in the farming sector also, in the agriculture sector also. In fact, this again will be one of the first of its kind. We are going ahead with what is called crop colonies. See, our experiences, and all of you would have also seen in your respective states, there have been many years when due to overproduction, prices fall down and farmers face distress. In fact, in Telangana also this used to happen. Chili farmers will bring their produce on the roads and they will dump that chili. Tomato farmers in Andhra Pradesh will bring the tomatoes on the road and throw it below the trucks and all, because there is no market for that. So we want to do scientific evidence-based cropping management every year. what is the extent beyond which prices are bound to fall, etc., etc. So lots of reforms are happening, productivity increases, and so on and so forth. So I'm looking after technology solutions to support all these agriculture reforms. And I've very recently constituted a small task force group in my office, which is trying to identify what all technologies are available. So agriculture, as you know, there are certain pre-production kind of things. So when we were brainstorming and debating, someone told me that Microsoft has a solution which can predict, which has used big data for the last 50, 60 years, and they have created a predictive tool. That tool will tell you what is the best time to sow the crop. When monsoons come, there is a particular time when if you sow, the results are the best, the productivity is the best. Already many states have tried this out, including Telangana, of using drones to do pest spraying, pesticides spraying, precision agriculture. There are other tools also which help you aggregate your produce, find the best market. So all possible, the entire value chain of cropping, we want to find the best available technologies, and obviously we'll give preference to homegrown technologies. So we are serious about it, and I'm glad that Mr. Hazari has asked this question. And what I'll do is that I'll in the chat box, I will type my mail ID, my contact details. So anyone who wants to ask anything one-on-one should be. I mean, this is possible.
That would be wonderful. Yes, that will be very useful. Moving to another sector which has been very severely affected is the real estate construction sector. Now, given the fact that many IT companies in particular will also look at the work from home option, which will mean that they could look at the possibility of shifting from a large office space to a comparatively smaller space. What do you see is going to be the impact on the commercial space, and will it lead to a glut of office space?
So obviously the real estate sector will also see some turmoil. We are still not very sure what are going to be the long-term repercussions, but in the short run, when companies would like to kind of preserve cash, etc., definitely the demand that we were witnessing, in fact, Hyderabad itself had become the #1 city in terms of getting more and more demand for commercial real estate. For the first time last year, we had overtaken Bangalore in terms of the absorption of commercial real estate, demand for commercial real estate, and so on. So we need to see, but lots of analysts are also mentioning that what is called co-working spaces, those kind of things will become popular. Another concept about which I read recently is that, let us say, apartment complexes, gated communities, some of these kind of buildings or complexes, they will have workspace also. So I live in a gated community, but instead of going to my office, which is maybe 10 kilometers away or 15 kilometers away, there is some common area where we have office-like environment. So I may be working for company X, my neighbor in the gated community may be working for company Y, but both of us can come to that space from where we link up to our companies, to our devices and work. So lots of possibilities, lots of interesting things are being talked about, and let us see what happens. So this is also an area where we should do a deeper dive and come out with some toolkits, some recommendations for the real estate players also.
Right. Telangana, Jayesh, has done pretty well in the power sector compared to the kind of issues we used to face in United Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Ganapathy has a question talking specifically about API. API calls for huge power needs and it's a very significant cost component. Does Telangana have a plan?
We have. So we are actually coming out with one of very large, in fact, world's largest, the largest pharma-focused industrial park, which is called Pharma City. And because of the API scenario the world over, we have decided when we have reviewed the master plan of that of that pharma park, we have felt that APIs need to be accommodated much more quickly and on a larger extent. So that park, that portion, roughly around 2,000 acres of that industrial park, will be dedicated for API. And the kind of, it is not just power more power requirement, they also are extremely polluting. So the sewerage treatment, the effluent treatment has to be of a very high order. So we have provided for all that, and we are only waiting for the national government to announce that scheme before we take off and start allotting. So we have taken care of.
Yeah. You mentioned about electronics at the beginning of your talk. Now, Sanjay Bhandari wants to know what can be done to bring India in the forefront of the manufacture of electronics. Electronic City, which was the tag earned by Bangalore earlier before it kind of started becoming the Silicon Valley of India, the IT hub of India. Is Hyderabad or any other city kind of positioning itself as the electronics hub in India?
See, right now, none of the hubs which have some limited amount of an electronic, and I won't call it manufacturing. Very little manufacturing is happening in India. Most of it is assembly. So whatever is happening, anyway, for the lack of other word, we'll call it manufacturing, but in reality, it's all assembly. There are 4 centers now. One is Noida, which is propelled by Samsung. One is in Tamil Nadu, Sri Perumbudur, the old Nokia factory, which has been taken by Foxconn. The third is Tirupati Sri City in Andhra Pradesh. And the fourth one is, I mean, there are 2, these 3 are the bigger ones. The 2 others which are not that big, but which are small, relatively small. One is in Bangalore, one is in Hyderabad. But none of these 5 at this point in time can match anything which China has to offer for electronics. So that is the reason we have been going to China regularly. We have met people from Taiwan, Korea, etc. But these are the drawbacks which pull us down. So we have been writing to the Union IT Ministry that whatever has been the reason for success of China has to be replicated in India, and you have to partner with states to help us. So if you choose these 5 hubs or these 5 locations and help these 5 to come up with large scale electronics parks, which has all the plug and play facilities, which has dormitories, which has social infrastructure, physical infrastructure, skilled manpower, and so on and so forth, then we should be able to attract electronic manufacturers.
Right. Basically make these 5 really Atmanirbhar in the real sense of the word. The health services have been in the forefront during the last 2.5 months of the corona pandemic. Mr. Ashok wants to know, will classifying health services as an industry bring about any positive results?
See, the benefit of, but healthcare in any case is an essential service. So yes, at this point in time, when we look at the day-to-day COVID management scenario, being being a part of essential services, they function 24/7 uninterrupted. So in that sense, changing their status does not benefit them in any additional way from what they are already benefit. In the longer term, if you're looking at investments in the healthcare sector, etc., see the benefit which by calling someone an industry, at least from a state's point of view, you get is that you get certain incentives, like you get GST benefits, you get power at a discounted rate. There are industrial parks where land is made available. But in Hyderabad, for example, let us say education, health, these are looked after by the Metropolitan Development Authority, and they have also created some kind of land banks or special clusters where healthcare services can come, educational universities can come. So some of those benefits are available in Telangana, but suppose you at a national level consider them or classify them as an industry, these are the additional benefits they will get. So I mean, this is a national decision. If we feel that it will benefit them, we should champion that and we should argue for that.
Okay. Jayesh, 2 last questions before we call it a day. This one comes from Mr. Ravichandra Babu. He says the warehousing industry is going through a growth phase. Many of the large international operators are unable to procure land from the private owners as the prices are quite high, very exorbitant. Located geographically in the center of the country, it would prove to be a critical location for moving goods across the country. Will the government step in to facilitate to procure lands at reasonable prices for these warehousing operators?
Yes, absolutely. And logistics is a very important sector for us. we have identified 14 sectors which are of priority importance, and logistics is one of the 14. And we support logistics players. In fact, many of you would be aware that e-commerce has become very, very important, not just during COVID, but even before that. And all the top e-commerce players have chosen Hyderabad to set up their logistics hubs. Amazon, just to give an example, their Asia's largest fulfillment center is located in Hyderabad. It is close to the airport. They have multiple other warehouses. Flipkart has, Snapdeal has, Big Basket has. So e-commerce players have voted on their feet to choose Hyderabad for their logistics investments. And definitely they have been assisted by the government, because this is one of the 14 priority areas. So the land where Amazon has built their fulfillment center is part of the government land. So wherever government lands are available, we'll be happy to make it available to you at a discounted price. And then there are other benefits also. So I have shared my mail ID, etc. So I would request Mr. Ravichandra Babu to get in touch with me, share his concrete plans, and I'll be very happy to support him.
Right. Jayesh, you mentioned about the fact that you are looking to kind of train people from Telangana so that you are not completely dependent on the migrant labor, the guest workers coming in from Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh and other states. How long do you think this entire process is going to take place, and how do you see that changing the entire work culture and ecosystem in Telangana, and same could be replicated in other states as well?
Yes. So two things we are doing. See, one is that why we don't find local workers. There are two reasons. One is that those are very low end kind of jobs, and no one prefers to do it. And therefore, so for example, a brick kiln worker. So in Hyderabad, in Telangana, most of the brick kiln workers are from Orissa, because no one locally is prepared to do those kind of jobs. So there our answer or our support will be, is it possible to mechanize some of those tasks? Is it possible to bring some technology? Can some of the work be offered to all the brick kilns as a service? So that is one. The second reason why we are not getting local laborers is that those skills are not there. So for example, I'll give you an agriculture example. We have large number of rice mills, because Telangana is one of the largest rice growing states in the country today. So after the grains are harvested, the milling operations start, and for milling operations, there are particular steps of how you bag all those rice, and then you weigh them, and then you give it to milling and all. So all that work labor force comes from Bihar, and when we asked the millers here, they told that those skills are not there in our local people. So we will be working with industry to find out precisely. So when I told you that we are doing a deep dive for 10 sectors to find out what help do they require. So in those sectors where there is a labor issue, where non-availability of labor or non-availability of dependent labor is a factor, we will be intervening in these ways. So definitely it is being worked out, and the time frame will be immediate to medium term.
Right. Thank you very much, Jayesh, for taking all these questions, kind of guiding us through what all plans does Telangana government have in a post-COVID world, or perhaps as we kind of deal with Corona, to live with Corona. May I now request Mr. Ashokan Krishnamurthy, Managing Director of MITRAA, to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, friends. It's been quite a revelation for me as far as knowing how Telangana has managed to bring about such a dramatic change in their industrial outlook over the past 5 years. And as we progress post-lockdown, I think the industries is going to be playing a very, very major role in the revival areas. What Mr. Jayesh Ranjan has indicated in his speech, and also on the basis of the answers which he has given for the various queries which have come about, I am sure that Telangana possibly would be going maybe a bit more faster than what the other states are doing. We normally hear of people working 24/7, but knowing seeing the progress of Telangana over the last 5 years, I think in the case of Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, it would have been more like 28/10 rather than 24/7. And Mr. Ranjan, it has been a pleasure having you around, and despite your tight schedule, you have been able to, accept our request, and it's really kind of you, and it was really nice of you to have accepted the request. We thank you very much on behalf of SICCI as well as on behalf of MITRAA. Sudhir, you have been with us in this last series, and you have made a beginning in the second one also. And as usual, you have been absolutely efficient in moderating the discussion, taking the questions, putting it up to the speakers. I think you deserve a very major thanks from our side. Now coming to SICCI, based on the success which we saw last year, in the last series rather, we became a little greedy and requested the SICCI if we can have one more such series. And it was extremely nice of SICCI to have accepted this request and gone ahead with the second series of our lectures. I think SICCI deserves a very major, a very big vote of thanks for this particular thing, specifically Mr. Ganapati, Dr. Raghavan, and Aishwarya, who have been really working, I would say here 24/7 for making it a success. This series has been sponsored by Sri City Private Limited, and we would like to extend our personal thanks to Mr. Ravi Sinha Reddy, who has been happy to sponsor this event despite all the other constraints which people are facing during this pandemic times. Mr. Reddy, grateful thanks to you for being a sponsor of this particular event. And finally, to all the members who have been present in this series of lectures and topics, a big thanks to every one of you for having participated enthusiastically and with the various queries and all to sort out our issues. Just a reminder, tomorrow again we are having the second lecture in this second series which we are having with SICCI and MITRAA. This will be by Mr. Pullela Gopichand. I think we must have all heard about his name. He is a former All England badminton champion, which was an unofficial world championship title. And currently he is the national coach of the Indian badminton team, who have been bringing laurels to this country over the past few years. I'd request you to all join us tomorrow at the same time, and we'll be happy to have you around. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jayesh. Thanks so much. Thanks, folks. See you guys tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Jayesh.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.